The plugged-in Bruce Feldman has dropped his 2024 NFL mock draft loaded with intel. We want to react to that today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every single day. We appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Happy Friday. Happy Bruce Feldman. I mean, Bruce, between the freaks list and now the mock draft with what's included in the mock draft, Bruce very quickly having some pillars of draft content that I greatly look forward to each and every year.
Yeah, he's one of those, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
And that list is kind of short for me. So we are excited to see this come through late on Thursday and said, we got to talk about this on Friday.
So for the record, I have had a chance to do the corners that we were discussing.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's coming soon. We'll have a corner discussion very soon.
Rankings didn't quite turn out the way they thought they would.
Okay.
It's a little turned upside down, but we'll talk some of these corners here in this mock draft that by Bruce Feldman. And we always try to have respect for, if you do content and you do a mock draft, not just sitting here and ripping through every single pick and spoiling all the content, particularly because it's subscription-based service, so we're sensitive to that. But we do want to react to some parts of this and encourage you to go read the whole thing. We're kind of chalky at the top. We get quarterbacks with the first 4 picks, which seems like the momentum's really there. I think the surprising one, Joe, is Drake Maye being the choice to the Patriots at 3. Feels like it has really started to settle into expectation the last week. And that's what Bruce Feldman has at pick number 3, New England sticking and picking Drake Maye.
I kind of think it's either him or McCarthy for the Patriots. We know that Caleb Williams is going to be the first pick, but if they had a choice of Jaden Daniels on the board, I just kind of feel like they would prefer this style of quarterback. I think the conversation. Well, no, I think they would prefer Drake Maye. I feel like stylistic. Yeah, I would. I would think that way. And so I wonder if their conversation is less Jaden Daniels versus Drake Maye, being mindful of some momentum for Daniels to be the number 2 pick, versus is it really Drake Maye versus JJ McCarthy for them?
I thought the interesting quote that was included here was the second. There were 4 quotes on Drake, and I think all of the quotes kind of summarized him really well, where the arm talent's off the charts, kind of his spatial awareness is really good. But there's inefficiencies with his footwork and adjusting to a new scheme, and that caused misfires and accuracy issues, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's all applicable. But I thought the second quote was really interesting. He could be a better quarterback than Caleb Williams if you protect him. He could throw the what out of the ball. But the last 2 years, we could really tell he didn't like all that stuff around him. He gets a little bit scared back there, in my opinion. I thought that was a not overly glowing, in spite of starting very positive, that he could be better than Caleb Williams. You start invoking the word scared back there, and people's ears are gonna perk up when you hear that. And I think when I watched him, I didn't necessarily see scared, but I saw what's the word to describe it? Is lack of trust the same thing as scared? I think he didn't trust a lot of what was around him.
Which would make sense given a really different looking scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I thought one of my favorite things about Drake Maye was the toughness that he showed. Some of those situational moments, taking off with the football, taking some hits. Now he's not like Sam Howell tough.
That's in there. I thought Sam Howell was the tougher kid. is included.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a high bar, right? Like,
right.
Howell turned into an animal that last season at North Carolina, taking hits. I mean, his yards after contact was insane.
Yeah.
How about this quote from Feldman on JJ McCarthy as we kind of focus in on the top 10 here? He has Minnesota trading up for JJ McCarthy. I thought he was great. You could tell he was the alpha male on the team from a leadership perspective. He was coached up well on how to make throws and make decisions very fast. He throws very well in the run. He did have a really good O-line and good defense, but we didn't think their receivers were great, and he made it all go. My big is the alpha male, the leadership, right? Like this intangible component. I think that says a lot about JJ McCarthy.
And it seems like that's the general consensus, and it makes sense if the league is overtly high and people are a little confused as to why on JJ McCarthy, and that's the element that they walk away from all of their interactions with him with, that they have a chance to have those in-person discussions and get to know the person. And you don't see that on the outside looking in. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? And so it's not necessarily a huge surprise to me that is an intangible that you would get quotes walking away from talking about JJ McCarthy, because the league is kind of telling you that there's more here that we like than what you can just see when you watch him on TV.
Yeah. I don't know. I've kind of felt those things too. I like McCarthy. Throw tomatoes at me. I don't care.
No, me too. I like him too.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, consensus, like people are acting like this is a Mac Jones situation. Like out of nowhere, people like this guy because he won some games in college. I think there's so much more.
Mac had a lot more around him with what Alabama had to work with. And I think the style of offense that Alabama ran versus the style of offense that Michigan ran is very different too, even though they both like to run the ball. We get one more in here. How about wide receiver 2, Rome Odunze? Malik Neighbors falls to 9. The Falcons spurning Neighbors, which I know was the fascinating talking point we had the other week, was what avenue should Atlanta choose to go? Neighbors to Chicago at 9 feels like a dream come true, with the Giants going with Odunze at 6.
I think for Chicago, if one of those 3 receivers is there, it makes sense for me. Obviously, we love the idea of Keenan Allen and DJ Moore together, but is Keenan Allen really a long-term piece of that? I think you're in a great position to go ahead and bring in Neighbors now, who unbelievable ceiling, but I think you could watch the tape and realize that there's like some technical refinement that needs to come with his game. Heck of a succession plan there as you usher in this Caleb Williams era. I think if there's a world where one of those top 3 is on the board at 9, Chicago shouldn't think twice about that.
I agree.
All right, folks, more picks to dive into here, reflecting on Bruce Feldman's 2024 mock draft, so be sure to stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, so picks 11 through 20, the second third of this mock. Anywhere you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some the landing spots are pretty fascinating along the way here. How about this, like Denver, LA, or Denver, Vegas, 12-13 back-to-back, where both teams need quarterbacks. And he has Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo, going to the Broncos.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, at 13, the Raiders pick a quarterback, and that quarterback is Michael Penix Jr.
There is so much drumbeat for Penix. Do you think it is annual late March, early April drumbeat on a player that doesn't go? Or do you think like we've reached that critical mass where like you just kind of have to assume it is going to happen?
It's hard to know, man. Like, I wonder how much of this is just dictated by looking at depth charts and seeing, well,
Sure.
it's Gardner Minshew and Jarrett Stidham. Or not, and it's not Jarrett Stidham. It's Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders.
Mhm.
Like, that's not serious. So here's this hotshot quarterback that had all this production and to rip it down the field. I think there's some parallels to maybe what you think Luke Getsy wants to be as an offensive coordinator, and you're just thinking to yourself, maybe this could happen. I have a hard time. I don't have a hard. I mean, I've studied Penix. I have a hard time with him being somebody that in this stratosphere, and a guy that if you pick him number 12, all of a sudden you're saying to your fan base, you're saying to your team, this is our guy.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. The quotes are rave reviews. Arm talent is as good as I've seen. He could throw every ball on a rope. We lived and died by the blitz, but he got his yards. You're blown away by the throws he's making into windows with touch. Accurate on all these big throws.
Is he?
Unbothered.
Kyle, does this guy watch the tape? Whoever said this?
The down the field, the deep shot passing plays, yes. But there was a lot of stuff inside of like 10 yards because his process with his feet and how much he relies on just his arm. Now the arm talent's really good.
Yeah.
But some of these throws where he's just relying on his arm and his process has to be hurried. I think that's where the quote that was said, I felt like he didn't handle pressure as some others did, is overly applicable. But like, I don't care what he ran in his pro day. I don't know that that's ever going to be a strength of his game. But it's just that the perception of the downfield passing element of Penix and what that makes the overall perception of him as a player is, I think, where you and I have the biggest disconnect.
I love the ability to throw the deep ball. Who doesn't love that? Probably a very unimportant piece of an evaluation for a college quarterback prospect. We've seen too many guys where that's like their superpower is they can throw the deep ball, and then they're not good players.
Well, and then you consider the Raiders' offensive line.
Oh, brother.
You're gonna ask them to spend a lot of time under tension so we could take those shots down the field?
Not as currently constructed, sir. Not. And this last quote, his ability to read coverage and manipulate pressure is high-level stuff. Like, I just really disagree with that. Okay. So. Yeah, we can move off of that. Big defensive line run here in this stretch of picks as my computer chooses to be laggy.
17, 18, 19 are defensive linemen, with Jared Verse to Minnesota trading up, Byron Murphy to Cincinnati, and then Laiatu Latu to the Rams at 19.
I think we're seeing that a lot.
Latu to the Rams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's like the LA thing and all that, but obviously they got to need it at edge rusher for sure. Probably pretty excited by Kobe Turner as part of that interior defensive line, but getting some edge rush to go with what they have feels important to me. They've made some additions to their secondary, which was something that had me nervous. I think that allows them to be in a good position there in they're picking 19. I think they're going to have a chance at one of those top 3 edge rushers.
Yeah, I think so as well. What do you think of this quote on Latu? My knock on him is I don't know if he played as physical as you'd like. They were a run around you defense, not so much a take you on scheme. He could get away with things in college you probably can't do in the NFL, but he's quick and can change directions fast.
Yeah, I think it's probably true.
Watch the Oregon State tape, right?
Yeah.
And watch Fuaga get after him. I think that's where I think there's some credence to that observation. I don't question his toughness or his motor, but there were some guys that kind of got into him, and he couldn't. If he looked up to try to like work around the block and he gave up his pads, I think I saw a little bit of that to some degree as well. But I know the pass rush profile is off the charts.
Are you a little surprised that I've seen more and more momentum for Cincinnati at 18 going defensive tackle? I definitely recognize how that can be a major help for them. I love the signing of Sheldon Rankins. They still have BJ Hill in the mix there. But, like, I think people are really buying in on Trent Brown, I guess, and Orlando Brown as their tackle tandem. Maybe it's just playing the value there, and maybe the depth of the class could be there, but it felt like this was like a right tackle spot. I know if Brock Bowers isn't there, then it opens up some possibilities, but Bengals are a fascinating team to see how they choose to attack this. We'll get some clues as to where they think some of their long-term answers are on their roster and where they don't.
Yeah, obviously you have the T. Higgins franchise tag situation. They brought in Zach Moss to replace Joe Mixon, which I think transitioning away from Joe Mixon, you could certainly justify, but is Zach Moss, Chase Brown, or will they go running back at some point in this draft? Not that would be on the table for him in the first round.
Right.
I would want a little bit more insurance than a side of Orlando Brown having Trent Brown, Jackson Carman, and Dante Smith as my tackles, though. Like I would want to make sure I have a utility player that can definitively play tackle on the roster.
Right.
But we also had, I think that the tackle break here didn't necessarily go that we thought it would too, because you had Seattle go with a tackle in Fatanu, talking about the connection with Ryan Grubb, who was his former offensive coordinator at Washington, now in Seattle. So I think if that domino kind of changes who's available, maybe that does kind of open this up to be the more sensible selection.
Yeah, I think the tackle board in terms of how it's actually going to fall on draft days is different than maybe the way we've perceived it with this, like to me, Joe Alt's very clearly the top tackle.
He is comfortably
right. And the NFL tackle should agree with that. But this isn't necessarily the Olu Fashanu O2T or OT2 situation where, I mean, Feldman's got him going 20th in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the commentary last year when he decided to stay in school is that, wow, a top 10 pick is returning. Well, it doesn't look like it. It looks like potentially he could be the fourth or fifth tackle off the board. We saw, like you mentioned already, Fatanu, this Fuaga comes off the board before him. Of course, Joe Alt. I mean, in this mock draft, he's OT4. And who knows, like, J.C. Latham's valuation.
Right. If the team's going to draft on need for right tackle, they could very easily go Latham over Fatanu or over Fashanu.
And especially with the Ramczyk situation with the Saints and him being a right tackle, that to me opens up. The Saints don't have to get a left tackle only.
Right.
They need help at both tackles.
Right.
So that tackle board, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. And I still don't think we're being mindful of enough of the possibility that Fatanu is OT2. Like in the NFL size.
It's for me.
So
he's a dude, man.
Well, right. Like, I don't think that's a hard conclusion to arrive at.
Some of this will be flavor. And I think that's more everybody's kind of had the same consensus assumptions for 9 months now, 10 months now. I think this will be a little bit more of a flavor class, and maybe that'll lead to some eyebrows being raised, Joe.
All right, Kyle, in the back portion of this mock draft, we see a quarterback, a team trading back into the first round for a quarterback. So we're going to talk about that and more. So be sure to stick with us. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer.
If we came into this mock and we said, Joe, whoever you get at 28 and whoever I get at 21 is who we're actually going to get, would you take it?
Quick pause. The world needs to know that we do that all the time. You and I
Every
are
time.
Yeah, you and I,
mock.
every time that we pull up a mock draft, we say to each other, all right, this is it. This is the reality of who you're getting. And that could mean a one round mock draft. That could mean a 7-round mock draft. This happens daily.
So would you take it?
Well, let me see who it is. Hold on.
You don't know. I know.
No, I don't know. Do you predict that I would take it or not? I'm looking at pick 26. I'm almost there.
Probably.
Oh, no.
Maybe. A wide receiver.
Maybe.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. He's a player that I wish someone else would find out if they're good or not. I would understand it.
For Bills fans, it's Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver, University of Texas. Miami 21, Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, Illinois.
Yeah, you taking that, Kyle Crabbs?
Yeah, I'm pretty fired up about that one. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I would be too. I feel like Dallas is going to, or it's not, excuse me, Dallas. Miami's going to be in a hard spot to mess that up. Because I think they're going to be able to get a really good D tackle or a really good guard. I mean, you never say never on possibilities, but I have a hard time feeling like they're not going to get one of those that's really good.
It's almost mathematically impossible for the board to fall doomsday. It is mathematically possible, but it's like you have like two picks that have to go favorably for you to get like a player that you're going to be like, yeah, I think that's a very logical, just run the card in and move on with your day.
Like Fatanu, Fuaga, Newton, Murphy, you are a Miami Dolphin. And you got to be through the moon of any one of those players.
Yeah, you get any one of those four, you feel pretty good about it.
Be careful to say your doomsday scenarios out loud because, as we know, that
they've happened to me. How about Jacksonville trading down from 17 to 23? And it feels like there's a little bit of smoke and momentum on that, too. In the last couple of days, they get Kool-Aid McKinstry as another corner, another big physical corner. I really like the quotes on him. Not as quick out of the break as Terry and Arnold, but he uses his hands to make up for his feet. I thought that was a really good summation of Kool-Aid's game. Really good in man coverage. Played really sticky on guys this year.
It fits kind of that prototype that you think Jacksonville likes.
Mm-hmm.
They need a guy to go with Tyson Campbell. So I think corner is very logical for them.
How about this Green Bay pick, 24?
J.C.
Latham to the Packers. Are you kidding me? Add Josh Jacobs, Elgton Jenkins, Zach Tom, Latham now.
People movers.
Guard tackle.
Yeah, I like that idea for them to add O-line, and I think they're going to be in a great position to get something meaningful. And the multifaceted layers to this Packers offense with their young skill players and like variety of skill sets to go with a do-everything quarterback that doesn't have limitations to an offensive line that with another piece you start to get excited about. Yeah, it's a new day in Green Bay. They're so much more likable too with like out of the Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, it's so much. I was texting with somebody the other day about it. We're like, yeah, it's just a new vibe out there in Green Bay, and it's super likable.
Yeah,
a lot of different layers to that offense in terms of those skill sets. You have to love it.
And LaFleur's going to have a blast with all of it because there's there's all size and explosiveness with the youth, and then there's like certain levels of it that there's interchangeability too, which makes it like really fun.
We teased coming into this segment that a quarterback was traded up for. The Denver Broncos move into pick 27, where the Arizona Cardinals were scheduled to pick, and they get Bo Nix. And
Cardinals trade down twice in this mock.
Yeah, and they already have all the draft picks.
Right. I kind of like it as long as like your expectations are in the appropriate place this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can only hoard draft picks for so long. Like, you got to get dudes for your roster, like at some point. Um, I've become more and more of a fan of the idea of the Broncos getting Bo Nix. We did the tape study. We had the conversation last week about McCarthy, Nix, Rattler, and Penix.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much likability with Bo Nix. And just like, yeah, I don't think he's got a massive ceiling, but the way that he operates an offense, I can see aligning very well with Sean Payton, especially coming out of Russell Wilson, who I don't think is a good operator of the offense.
I think the fascinating thing for Bo is he's kind of become a game manager system. And I know that people turn their nose up at that phrase a lot, thanks to like Cam Newton had the whole thing, right? And everybody lost their minds about who Cam called game managers and not game managers, but like executing the offense. But then with Bo Nix, you have a live arm off platform, and you have mobility. So I think that's the fascinating blend of Bo Nix, where he had to be somewhat successful outside of structure because of how bad the Auburn offense was, and then goes to Oregon and gets structure put around them. And I really appreciated Bo Nix. I don't know if you saw the quote from his interview with RG3, but he said a lot of people don't realize, like, many times quarterbacks are the product of their environment. And like there was that self-awareness there, and that you think about maturity, 24 years old, what, 5-year starter, 61 game start, like all that stuff. And it's like, hey, he probably does really get it. Like a lot of other guys probably don't, because he's lived it. And to come up at 27, Bruce didn't put any trade package like details in there, but at that stage,
smart,
right? Yeah, never do it unless you have to. To walk away with Quinyon Mitchell and Bo Nix is a really nice 1-2 punch. Now, if you enjoyed our insight on the mock, head over to The Athletic and read the rest of it for yourself. We gave you some of the broad strokes, but you're going to have to go check out the whole thing for yourself. Make sure you support good content and support Bruce with all the great resources that he brings to all of us who are draft nicks all over. But that is going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked on NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. Make it a great weekend, and we will be back to talk to you all again soon.